For this episode, we asked listeners to send in their dilemmas that are keeping them up at night. The relationship questions, the situationships questions, the is this normal? My boyfriend's mom is still washing his boxers questions. We opened the DMs and the inbox and whoa, you guys did not hold back. So helping me to tackle your conundrums today are comedian Enya Martin, writer and broadcaster Barbara Scully, and Laughter Lounge MC Brian Gallagher, don't pronounce the G. Between the three of them, there's plenty of life experience, plenty of strong opinions. We're going to sort this out, lads. We're going to sort out the woes of the world. Right, Enya?
Can't wait.
Bring it on.
Let's bring it on. Would you say you've mastered the whole relationship thing now in your 30s?
Yeah, definitely. And when you see your friends as well who just go through relationship after relationship, it's like, that's the common denominator here, like, you know. You can't say it to them, you know. But yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah, I think we all think we're a bit of an expert, don't we? Barbara, what do you think?
No, I'm not an expert.
Oh, are you not?
No,
okay.
Definitely not. No, I mean, I've been married for 30 years this year, which is like forever. And
well done.
Yeah, well done.
Wow.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think it's more like kind of endurance rather than being an expert on anything. I have endured. And every so often, and I'm speaking for him as well. I know every so often we look at each other and go, what the fuck are we still doing? Like, and then we realise that neither of us could move out. Do you know what I mean? And the whole thing we're so entangled. Everything is so entangled that it would be just too hard to untangle it at this stage. And we're both too lazy. And we go, do you know what? We'll motor on for another year and see how you go.
But you know what? That is the key. Apparently, I've spoken to a lot of experts on this.
So I've cracked
podcast.
it.
By going, what the fuck are we doing here?
Yeah.
Every couple of years, because you're checking in. You're checking in.
I suppose, yeah.
Maybe not like that, but you know.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
I just think there's too many ways out now, isn't there? Like for people, whereas like back when you started going out with your husband, or even 20 years later now, you just stead through it, when you just, whereas people kind of see all these dating apps and they're looking at their friends and the highlights on social media and they're like, I want a bit of that.
I often compare, we got married for my generation late. We were both in our mid-30s, right? And I was an unmarried mother. So, shock horror. But I've often, and I mean, we both have talked about this, we both felt like we were a little bit like drinking at the last chance saloon. Like I said, it was like, when you went back in the day on a night out in town and you were having a great time and you thought, I have to go for the last bus now because if I don't get on the last bus, I'm going to have to get a taxi. It's going to cost a fortune. So you jump on the last bus. So we kind of both figured we jumped on the last bus and just make the most of it.
That's very romantic, a nice way of putting it, isn't it?
It's not romantic
gorgeous.
at all. No,
absolutely gorgeous.
Is it? Yeah. Do you reckon?
Practical
But you're
romance.
still together. Yeah. Welcome to Just Between Us with me, Jennifer Zamparelli, sponsored by Kildare Village. Oh, yeah. Now, this podcast is mostly about fun indoors, but if you fancy a bit of al fresco, why not get out of the house and take a visit to Kildare Village with over 100 boutiques, 60 of which are exclusive in Ireland and 20 new brands to choose from. Visit Kildare Village, shopping that's so Irish. You're right. There's so many outs nowadays, isn't there? Like, I mean, divorce was illegal in Ireland until not so long ago. So people were kind of stuck together. How are you getting on over there?
Well, I'm in a relationship. That's good, I think. Yeah.
Well done, fair play to you.
I'm keeping the show on the road. Everything's going well. I put a lot of thought into things like what'll I have for dinner. I'm a modern man. It's going well.
What will we have for dinner?
Yes, that's what I meant.
That's what you meant, yeah, because you actually said, what will I have for dinner?
Wow.
Do you do a lot of cooking?
I do all the cooking.
You do? Sorry, you do all the cooking?
Pretty much, yeah. Pretty much all the cooking. But I like cooking. So, I mean, I could paint that as I'm such an angel. I do all the cooking. I like cooking.
I hope you do housework as well, though, do you?
I hoover.
Oh, she's very lucky.
This is men and hoovering.
I like hoovering, I like mopping, and I like cooking. And I would do those all day.
An unheard of breed in this day and age.
I love those things, but everything else, I wouldn't see any dirt anywhere else.
Okay.
The walls could be black, and I wouldn't.
You wouldn't be cleaning the toilet like at the bathroom or any of the really nice jobs.
I do that occasionally.
If you have
Christmas.
to.
Yeah.
Do you know what? Like, I was only reading something there the other day, and it was about like men are kind of like in fear now that they don't have anything to bring to the table because women are just so independent now, like when it comes to work and stuff like that, and like entrepreneurs and making their own money, that a lot of men now kind of feel inferior to some women in relationships.
Imagine what we would be like if we had a wife.
Yeah.
Oh my God. We'd get so much more done, wouldn't we?
Yeah, and like that type of thing where you were saying like you cook and you hoover and stuff, like there's so many men out there that can't do that, and women are just not standing for it anymore because they're like, well, you know, you're not the breadwinner here anymore, like we both are.
I never understood that division of like one is a breadwinner and one is not, one is higher up the totem pole than the other, you know.
Well, now, as the elder lemon in the room.
Go on.
I did the whole thing. As I say, we got married in our mid-30s. I already had a daughter. Then we had 2 more kids. When it got to the point where both of us were working full-time, we were both earning equally. And I loved my job and I was serious about my job. And when it got to the 3rd one being born, when she was about 1, we just said, this is mad. Like, life was just ridiculous. It was so stressful. Both of us had jobs that weren't 9 to 5, paying for 2 in childcare. When I look back now, I call those years the hurry up years, because it was completely hurry up in the morning, hurry up, get dressed, hurry up, have your breakfast, hurry up, get into the car, hurry up, go into the crash, hurry up. And by the time I arrived in work, and I shared an office with a guy I worked with, a colleague, and he used to float in like as if he'd just stepped out of the shower into his suit and in he came. I used to arrive in banjaxed. I felt like I'd done a whole day's work by the time I got in. And I did the same in reverse at the other end. In fact, myself and my husband got to the stage where we both played a game of dawdling on the way home, because neither of us wanted to be first home, because you walk into the kitchen and all the breakfast stuff was still everywhere. So it was just a nightmare. So we were lucky and privileged. This was Celtic Tiger, 2001. I said to him, if I stop working outside the home in a paid job and I stay at home for a year or 2, we get the kids a little bit further down the road and I'll do all the other things and you just earn the money. But it's not your money, it's our money, and I want a mobile phone and stuff like that. And it worked for us for 10 years. And I actually think, this got very serious now, shut up in a second.
No.
I actually think that this is one of the things that feminism has not done.
Yeah.
It has not. We've actually made life. I see it with my daughter. I have a daughter who's 38. She's got 2 kids. She works full time. Her life is mental and it's tiring. So it hasn't gotten any easier. It's actually got harder. I believe that parents, if there's 2 parents, one of them, if it's a single parent, should be facilitated in staying at home to look after the child, if that's what they wish to do, until the child starts school.
Oh, I remember when I was working in radio, that really well-paid job that I gave up. And I used to fantasize, used to have dreams about being a trad wife.
Yeah.
Oh, just like baking bread, which would be awful.
I can see both sides of the coin, though. I can, because I feel maybe it's the upbringing that I had, where, you know, I didn't have a lot, so that's like really like the fire in my belly to like, no, you need to just always be on the go. And I do get burnout. But it's like, I never want to be in the position where I have to depend on someone. That's where like I'd be coming from, you know. But I also see it from a point of view that, like, yeah, it can have its cons as well, you know. And I think what you said, like, it was agreed upon, like, life will just be easier if we agree to do it this way, rather than like walking into a marriage and just being like, oh, I don't want to work.
Yeah,
you know,
and that's down to the right person as well. Obviously,
Yes.
you were comfortable and happy enough to be able to say that.
Yeah.
But financial independence for me, Enya, is one of the most important things
That's
ever.
why
I'm
I think
still
if it
into
was
my kids now.
supported by the government for you to stay at home, you'd have a little bit more independence. But I mean, the other thing is, if you are able to do that, as I was, and the 1 year turned into 10 years, you might as well take a machine gun and blow up your career when you try and get back. If you're, as I was, coming up to 50 and had a 10-year hole in my CV where my career used to be, couldn't get a job. Because, you know,
You're punished.
Yeah.
A little bit, yeah.
You know, there's lots we still have to do.
Oh, but there's loads to do. And what
Yeah.
we're going to do first, we're going to get into these dating and relationship dilemmas, because I
Right.
know
That's where it starts.
you're going to be able to help. Okay, so this is number 1. It goes, I went on what I thought was a great date last week. We laughed, we kissed, but now he's gone really quiet. It's been 3 days. Do I double down? Like, do I text back? Do I preserve my dignity?
He might just be waiting for that first text, though. He might be
He could
waiting
be,
he might be
yeah.
saying, oh, don't be too keen. Maybe all his male friends are like, don't overdo it. You remember the last time when you put that girl off because you were too intense, you know? Because a lot of guys can be too intense. So maybe he's waiting for that message. And I would say just go for it. Send a message. If they don't reply,
Yeah,
Again?
it's weird. It's weird because
The mind game.
yeah, but Brian, I've never heard a single friend going, "Oh, he's too intense." The
Really?
majority of it is, he ghosted me. I didn't hear from him. Like, it's very rare they go, he's so intense. He sent me flowers again. Like, oh, what the fuck? You know?
Well, I think ghosting is a huge problem because of the choice that's out there, you know. And people, I genuinely think there are men out there who forget that they've been on a date 2 weeks ago with somebody because they've been on a date yesterday with somebody else, and they kind of go, oh God, how many dates have I been on? Who can't keep track of who they're meant to be texting.
I'm so glad. I might be married 30 years, 300 years, but honest to God, I am so glad I am not dating, because I don't understand the rules anymore. I really don't. This, like, we're exclusive, we're not exclusive, we're seeing somebody but I'm not going out with them. I really don't. I think the young people do be overthinking things to a large extent.
They do.
And have made it ferociously complicated.
But there's a lot of anxiety out there with the dating because, they're not...
What's anxiety? Like, I mean, I see this with my own daughters. Like... Do you know what I mean? You're test driving. You're just going out. You don't have to marry them. You're just going out with them. It's not you're not engaged. Stop making the big yoke about it. I agree with you, though, in this particular instance. To me, a week would be fair enough. People are busy. People have other stuff to do. Do you know what I mean?
That's true.
I would say a week, and then, whatever. Either send a text or move on. But
So you don't think you'd cope well if you were on the apps?
I couldn't cope now. No, I couldn't.
I think people are taking a step back from the apps. What I'm hearing through the grapevine is people are... They're going back to, getting people to set them up and all this kind of stuff because...
Do you know what's the
apps
biggest
is just
problem
not working.
nowadays? They got rid of the slow set.
Yeah.
Hard to argue with
that
that.
was
Like the slow set.
Slow set.
I think I would like the slow set.
Yeah, you could tell a headbanger for, within a minute of doing a slow set. You could tell somebody who was, just looking to get his end away for 2 minutes in a slow set. Bring back the slow set.
Bring back the slow set. You're so right. And I think back in the day when we went to discos and they had slow sets, we would give people a chance that we would never have given a chance because of embarrassment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then you end up, give them a chance and then marrying them,
Yeah, exactly.
Or whatever.
Slow set, solve all the problems.
Let's stick with dating. Okay, here's another one. I've been on 4 dates with a guy and he's lovely, but I'm still on the apps and keep thinking there might be someone better out there. I don't think I was like this before the apps. Why does my mind always jump to there might be better rather than this guy could be it? That is a huge problem with the apps. Just sticking with them for a second. Is there anything better out there? We're not giving that person a chance.
Yeah, it's like being on Shein and thinking your basket's full and then it's like, oh no, wait.
That's not a euphemism, right?
Yeah, it's spoiled for choice. I think
Are we though?
Sounds a bit like anxious attachment if I'm being honest.
Yeah, it is. They are designed to get us hooked, aren't they? The apps. Not that I've been on the apps. Wouldn't know what to
Everyone's always looking for something better now anyway, in every walk of life. People are in jobs now for short periods of time. I mean, years ago, people were in jobs for 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
Now people get a job and the first thing they do is go, I wonder what else is out there. Can I use this job on my CV to get a better job? And I think that's filtered through to dating and life in general. You're looking for a better electricity supplier.
That's true. But you do get a better deal if you do shop
You do,
around.
yeah.
Anyway, can I just say, you have a phenomenal beard.
Thank you.
For anybody who's just listening
It
and
is
not watching,
impressive,
it's
isn't
impressive.
it? Yeah.
What picture? I do find a lot of people say that the picture is a big issue on the apps.
Yeah.
Because lads are putting up pictures of them like with a fish or whatever.
I'm not on the apps, never been on the apps in a relationship.
But
If you
were, what picture would you use?
I don't think I could put this on the apps. It's people would be like, no.
But you know what? I don't want...
It's Marmite. Beards are Marmites. People love them
But
or
it's
hate them.
you, so you
Yeah.
have to.
But
Yeah.
it's also not like when you describe it as this big long beard, you kind of think of the Dubliners and you know, a big beard with like fried egg in it and
Bit of a
bits of
sandwich
rashers
in
and
there,
all.
yeah.
Exactly.
Which has been known to happen.
No, yours is very neat and tidy and organised looking. Like it's very kind of, it's like a waterfall.
Would it be able
It's
to
got a
fit
little bit
in?
of grey and it's actually very nice.
Yeah,
We're
would you
flirting
have
right
to
now. I
pop
don't know
it
what's
out?
happening. This is great.
Yeah.
We're trying to figure out your profile picture. If you're on
I
a
think
dating app.
profile picture, anybody put up just yourself, your best foot forward, however you look.
A white background.
LinkedIn
Colour
profile
background.
picture.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put your foot into it.
Just the beard.
I'd leave it
Just
at
the
your face.
beard. Just a picture of the beard, black out everything else.
It's
Yeah.
a tricky one, isn't it? I mean, I think it's probably easier for females, is it? We just put up a super glam smiley.
Yeah, with 10 friends.
I think
People use filters when they put on their...
that's
Yes.
the catfishing. That's
Oh,
the
is it?
catfishing.
Yes.
Yeah, that's my mother has learned how to use apps where she can like filter her face and lengthen her hair and stuff. And I was like, if you were to go missing tomorrow, the guards wouldn't know what you look like. And like that can happen
Gosh, that's
sometimes
cheerful.
with profile pictures on the dating apps.
But even with
Especially
AI now,
women.
people are probably using fake versions of themselves
Yeah.
on apps. Using
And
the
have
AI to do the
many
chats with people,
profiles.
many profiles, yeah.
So we're saying get away from the apps.
Yes.
Bring back the
Slow set.
slow set. Okay.
I should.
Living at home is a romantic death sentence. I don't know if any of you have done this. So my partner and I have moved into the spare room in my mother's house so we could save for a mortgage. How can we maintain a healthy sex life when my mum is barging through our bedroom door asking if we want toast or tea?
I mean, like, surely the obvious answer here is you get a big piece of paper and you put on it "sexy time, keep out," and you stick that on the doors. And
tea needed.
You know, why are people so pussyfooting around? I mean, your mother has given birth to at least you. She knows about sex. She knows how it works. I'm sure she knows that's what you're doing. So, like, why be reticent about saying, "Ma, we don't want any tea, toast, or we don't want you coming in the door. You'll be embarrassed more than we will. So just, give us an hour."
Did you have a lock on your door for your kids? For you and your partner and your husband?
Oh, God, no. No.
Were you ever caught?
I think we came fairly close a few times. You know, the kind of like the digging and get off. But no, I don't ever remember it being a problem. And I'm just thinking, as you're reading that, obviously I'm identifying more with the mother than with the young one having the boyfriend in the house. And I'm thinking, it's one of, I suppose, the few benefits of emigration. 2 of my 3 have emigrated to as far away from me as possible. But I don't have to deal with that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because I'm thinking, God, even if I really liked somebody's boyfriend, I don't really want him living with me. Do you know what I mean? I don't really want to see him at breakfast in the morning and sharing a bathroom with him and all that kind of stuffology. So, yeah.
Did you ever have to do that? And did you ever have to share an accommodation with a boyfriend and your mother at the same time? Was that awkward, or did you just avoid that altogether?
It was a granny flat, so it was out his mother's back garden. But still, people just walked in at any time. There was a bedroom and a living area.
Okay,
so there was
grand.
a wall. But yeah, I mean, the door would be unlocked during the day, and I'm not saying we were, but we could just be lying in bed watching the telly, and someone would just open the door and be like, "Hey, I just want to know if he's want any dinner." And it's usually we would lock it, but it's just in case anything would just happen spontaneously. But even then, even in our own kind of environment, we still felt a bit on edge. But like you were saying, Brian, you're in your 30s, maybe even late 30s, early 40s, and you're saving for a house, and you feel like you have to be teenagers again and tiptoe. I wouldn't be a fan of it.
Okay.
I suppose I was in a separate building nearly.
A separate building, is better. Definitely better. Yeah, I'm learning a lot about you, because you did say at the top of this, what time of the day they haven't said. Are you not a daytime person?
No, more so that
He's too busy doing the hoovering.
Any time would be great. You have hoovering and cooking.
The Hoover.
A frying pan in one hand, hoover in the other. Where would you find the time? No, that was more of a comment on if you are sharing a space with somebody who doesn't respect boundaries, then surely you wouldn't push the boundary of the daytime in case you're wondering if your mother's going to walk in with a cup of tea. Yeah. You'd wait until night time.
It's interesting because, Enya, I picture this being a bloke in his ma's house as well.
Wanting to hang out all the time.
Yeah.
Not me lit ma,
Yeah, I've been there. Well, my husband is very close to his mother. Weirdly,
Right.
Not weirdly close. That sounds awful.
Yeah,
but they're very, very close.
Right.
And there's this weird dynamic.
Right.
I love her to bits and it's great, but there's always a little bit of a battle.
Right.
Just a teeny tiny one. About tiny, Christmas comes around, there's a little battle, holidays is always. This is not my therapy session. Okay, here we go. I'm as liberal as the next guy, and up until now, we have no problem having sex after one date. However, my friend swears by it as being self-sabotage, so don't have sex after the first date. That the wait and the want is essential. Okay. Genuinely, what are your thoughts? Does playing hard to get have legs?
I think it depends on the individual, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I'm not here to judge, but I definitely think, you got to earn this, And if you give it up too easy, I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know.
I
think
it's-
through experience and what I've heard from people out there who are riding over loads of people, like me, that if you do, it can be a bit of a sentence. It can be the end of it. The little bit of a chase is always good,
Yeah, I mean, my
5% of
instinct
the
would be exactly that. Would be not on the first date. You know what I mean? what's it? Deferred gratification.
And sex is better when you know the person
Yeah, a little bit better. Yeah,
right?
exactly.
It is better.
Yeah.
I think building a connection is something that would be important to me. It doesn't mean that like you have to get married and all that, but like building somewhat of a like a connection.
Rapport.
Yeah.
Yeah, there does seem to be a third date thing now, though. Isn't that the thing? Is that kind of the barometer? It's 3 dates. I noticed that from hosting comedy clubs. You see dates coming in.
How did you notice that from
exactly.
I talk to the audience sometimes when I'm hosting. So if couples on a date, I generally ask what date are you on, and if they say third date, the audience collectively will always go, ooh.
Yeah.
And you can see the tension in the couple almost. They're not even watching the show. They're just going, it's
Pressure.
the third date. It's the third date.
See, this goes back to these rules that there are now.
Yeah.
Like, I'd hate that, knowing that you're seeing somebody for the third date and like, there's going to be an
Get a shave.
expectation.
No, that's always been there. That's not a new.
Oh, well, hello. No, it wasn't.
I think that the third date thing has always been a thing,
Yeah.
no?
Yeah.
Well, not going back as far as I did. I mean, of my friends back in the 80s, most of my friends, I would say, God, I hope none of them listen to this. Most of my friends, I would say, didn't have sex with their partner until they were married.
But there was a lot of fingering back in the day.
It was, yeah.
This is
Bring back fingering.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Lost
Bring
art.
back the slow set.
It was safer.
yeah.
Slow sets and fingering. That's
It
what
was
we.
safer. It was,
That wasn't sex.
No,
I know it is,
it's
but that wasn't
it's
sex
a
back in the
form.
day.
No, it wasn't.
wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't.
But it was definitely got people to where they needed to get to, apparently. Let's talk about
So
bodies.
you've heard.
Okay, bodies and confidence. Let's talk about this. We got a lot of emails in about this. My parents never talked about sex, ever. I basically learned everything from EastEnders. Who was riding on EastEnders? I can't remember. And then the internet filled in the blanks. Now my own child is starting to ask questions about sex and porn. I was hoping the school would deal with it, but it looks like that's not happening. Is it normal to still feel this mortified about having the birds and the bees conversation? Do you remember having your birds and bees conversation? What was your man like?
I got it from the teachers. I didn't get it from my parents. But one thing I will say is like I'm probably on the same page as well, because when there was like we would be watching movies in the house, and even let's just say Dirty Dancing, like, my parents would always be like, okay, the dirty bits are coming on now, you have to leave, or they'd fast forward it.
My mother, when I was probably about maybe 11 or 12, and I was thinking this on the way in on the bus. I remember we were in the Tara Towers Hotel having dinner, which was very unusual. Like, you didn't go out for dinner in the 70s. There was nowhere to go and nobody had any money and yada yada. I don't know why the two of us were in the Tara Towers Hotel having a grill, but we were. And my mother decided to give me the facts of life. Now, she gave me all the kind of the technical, the what and what goes where and all the rest of it. And I was like, okay, grand. I don't think I really knew very much about it. And I remember vividly her describing how an orgasm feels. Yeah. And I remember thinking, wow, I've got a very cool ma,
do.
This is great. Now, subsequent to that, we got sex education in school, and I went to an all-girls school, and the nuns were still involved. Our sex education was delivered by a nun during religion class. And I blamed that for why I am so rubbish. Much more rubbish than I ever thought I would be, because we sat there. Well, first of all, the nun delivering the sex education relied on these huge, big, multicoloured charts, one of the male organs and one of the female organs. And guess who got to hold them up because she was tallest in the class? Magoo here, so I couldn't see what was going on. So there was that, because I was literally holding them up. But the other thing which I remember, again, vividly, being told not once but a number of times by the nuns, that we needed, as young girls and young women, we needed to be very careful about leading a boy to the place of no return. Because once he got to the point of no return, that was your fault.
Wow.
Imagine. So I'm damaged.
Yeah.
I'm damaged by all of
you're
this,
screwed.
what the nuns did delivered. And I have 3 daughters, so my husband had the opt-out card of, you can do the birds and the bees thing, because I'm a bloke and you need to tell them about periods and all that as well. And, off you go. And I don't think I was, I must ask them, but I don't think I was really good. I know I kind
You
of...
didn't have the training.
I raced through it at 900 miles an hour and then did the cop-out thing of, now, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. I'll answer anything. Of course, nobody asked me anything. So, I think I was shocking. I was worse
You
than
can
my
always
mother.
go back to them.
What?
Draw them a diagram or something.
Yeah,
Back to them.
I think they've it figured at this stage.
You'd hope so.
Youngest is 24.
You'd hope so. You'd hope so.
25.
I think I read recently that they did the first proper full scan and picture of the clitoris in 2007. I mean, we'd already sent people, to space, but we didn't
Yes,
know
we didn't know where clitoris was.
exactly where that was or what it looked like
Yeah,
till the 2000s.
yeah.
Hi.
Right. Do you remember your parents sitting
I
you down?
don't remember any sex education whatsoever.
There was no sex education. There was no bottled water.
No.
Right? We didn't drink water in school.
Hard to know which was
Remember
worse.
getting bottles of water in school?
Yeah, no.
Like there was
I'm
a lot.
just
There's
wondering
no
what-
seatbelts.
I thought this was something to do with the sex. No,
I'm
it's
just saying
not.
it was
Yeah,
just-
okay, grand. I thought I'd missed something major.
Yeah.
How did you find out where it went?
I honestly don't remember. Isn't that amazing? Like, I genuinely don't
Did you
remember.
have to figure it out for yourself?
I think so. I don't remember. I think other guys talking about it, other kids talking about it, and it was always like, I was the youngest in my family. I have 2 older brothers, but they're much older than me. But anyone else who had brothers who were like 2 or 3 years older than them, they were getting their information filtering down, and then that would filter to the kids in the school and stuff like that. But I don't remember. I went to an all-boys boarding school for second year, and I don't remember anybody giving us any advice about anything. Or I genuinely have no memory of any sex education ever.
And was that a religious school? Like, was it
Yeah,
the
it was
brothers or
it was
whatever?
diocesan school, so it was like just a normal. They're priests, yeah, but I just don't remember. It was lay teachers, obviously, but I just don't remember anybody telling us anything. Now they must have.
And
I just don't
now,
remember.
like, are you any good at it? Because, like, but you know what I mean? I mean,
I'm better at cooking. Yeah, I compensate more bolognese, but I'm not bad.
it's really, you must be delighted when the internet came out. You're like,
Oh God, what am I going to Google next?
we're all the same. It's weird because the information just came to us, didn't it?
Yeah.
But I don't really
remember.
where. Definitely Judy Bloom. I don't know if you're probably too young for that. Anyway.
Jackie Collins.
Jackie Collins.
Jackie Collins.
This dirty book went around my yard.
Yeah.
Judy Bloom wrote this book, and there was a lot of throbbing things and pants and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And we got a lot of education through
From that.
But starved of
Totally.
education.
Totally.
I think it was the whole Catholic thing.
Yes, big time.
Yeah.
Like my friends who would say have had one night stands, they always say like they have to have a shower the next day because of Catholic guilt.
Ah, stop.
Like
That's because you don't get a UTI. So there's
Well, you should have a shower anyway.
yeah. They're trying to wash the
No
Catholic
UTI
guilt
and you
off.
still go to heaven. That's great.
We were given a very lopsided view of sex and sexuality and all of that kind of stuff, which was absolutely, and particularly women,
They were
because
afraid to
it
just get
went
to the
beyond.
point, weren't they?
Yeah, but women were, we were meant to stay in our lane and be, kind of virginal until we got married, and then, produces all the kids that, God was going to bless you with. Like, the whole thing was so mental.
Ireland. Was so mental.
It was. It was
really
just
was.
a shocker, and it wasn't that long ago.
It wasn't that long ago. Absolutely not. Okay, let's move on. Okay, my partner. Oh, so you're screwed, basically. Sorry, the birds and the bees chat.
Were
There's
you any good, Jen?
no, like
we're so
I'm
all
pretty
crap.
good now as a parent.
Yeah, that's what I meant, yeah.
Yes, I have an 11-year-old.
Okay.
And stuff is happening to her body. And really,
Yeah.
because of this podcast, I have the language to go.
Right.
This is what that is, and this is what you should do, and they know, and it's fair. I know how to make it age appropriate as well, because I have an
Yeah.
8-year-old boy as well.
Yeah.
So,
I do remember with my eldest daughter, I must have read or heard somewhere about how we shouldn't be giving our children like stupid names for their private bits, like calling it your Mary or whatever,
Yeah.
And so I taught her to say vagina. And I do remember my mother ringing me once, who was on pickup duty from the school, and she said she nearly crashed on the way home because she had Carla in the back of the car with her mate, and they were having a discussion about some wagon in the schoolyard, and Carla announced, well, I gave her a good kick in the vagina.
excellent. Lawrence was wearing one of my coats, and it was a. This is not an ad. She was wearing a Maj coat, which I bought, and she was telling everybody it was her minge coat. Yeah. Anyway, that's a totally different thing. But yeah, use the right names and age appropriate. But yeah, I'm much better. But like, we're also messed up from our parents. A lot of us in Ireland that we try and do a lot better with our own kids. Okay, we'll move on. My partner has recently become obsessed with the gym and keeps encouraging me to go with them. They say it's about being healthy together, but I feel they're really saying I should lose weight. Enya, we'll go to you because you're a fitness coach. What do you make of that?
Like I think it probably needs more context if she did say like, oh, I've probably put on a lot of weight over the last couple of
She's
years.
complaining, she's not feeling good about
Yeah.
herself. Yeah.
Or if she hasn't voiced that she's feeling shit about herself. But I have been on both sides of the coins. Like I have been someone, going back 5-6 years ago where my lifestyle was just shit. I was sedentary, I didn't exercise, I drank a lot and ate crap and stuff, and I didn't feel great. So when you're someone who actually does go to the gym and you go religiously for your headspace and then also to stay fit and healthy, and when you see someone who you're quite close to living the life that you used to live, you're like, you probably don't feel the best, and I just want to show you what this lifestyle is like. But people can't change unless they want to change, you know, or they won't change unless they want to change. And I think if it's a superficial reason to be like, oh, you'll look better, I don't think that's right. But I think you're going to feel better if you maybe like dip your toe in this lifestyle.
What was it for you then? What was the change?
Again, I just looked in the mirror one day and was just sick of feeling like shit. Like I was noticing my jeans were getting tighter. I was just a binge drinker and I didn't exercise, you know, and the thought of even going out on a 20-minute walk like just was horrific to me. And then the hardest part is starting, you know, and then it become basically rewire your brain to be like, oh, this actually isn't that bad after all. But it takes groundwork, you know, and building the foundations. But now I could never go back to living like that.
Didn't you run a marathon recently? Or?
In October, I ran my first marathon.
Wow.
I still haven't ran since.
You've done it.
You don't need
recommend,
to.
yeah.
You've done enough running for the rest of your life now. You're grand.
Is it amazing how, you know, how quickly you became to love you love it, you know what I mean, like that shift.
Yeah, but I suppose like the dopamine I would have gotten from like binge drinking or eating crap or just like laying on the couch all day. I used to go to bed at like 3-4 in the morning and sleep till like 1 a day when I was in college. But I get my dopamine now from doing things I never thought I'd be able to do, like running a marathon or, you know, building muscle, putting muscle on my frame, being able to do a 60 kg squat. And, you know, I probably wouldn't be able to do a body weight squat 2 years beforehand, you know. So that's how I get it. But there is a little bit of mad bitch still in there, you know.
Yeah, but that's okay.
Not
Balance.
completely gone, yeah.
Balance is very important. Totally. Okay, last one. My other half is a breath of fresh air, really witty and funny, and always puts everyone in a good mood. But sometimes it's a bit much when I'm trying to have a serious conversation. Does humour help or hinder a relationship? How do you find the balance, Brian?
It's tough. Humour. My default is humour as a comedian. Enya,
I would say all of you as the comedians, you know, it's your default.
It's your default. Great for diffusing small arguments.
Yeah.
So if someone's getting annoyed with you, if my partner's getting annoyed with me, if I've done something wrong, nothing crazy, small argument, and if I can get her to laugh, and then that's diffusing the argument straight away, and then I'm like, haha, I'm loved again. But I think the default then is to go to that. Even with serious conversations, you try to get the laugh and try to ease things a bit too much. So it's a bad habit, I would say, in serious conversations. Yeah, I think a lot of men do it, and I think a lot of people who like being funny and being light and don't like serious things tend to use it as a shield in relationships.
I feel like Chandler from Friends. Like I find like humour can nearly be a coping mechanism for me in like really awkward situations. Like, Enya, it's not the time. It's not the time.
Yeah.
Last question. When did you know you were funny?
Ooh. When did I know I was funny? My first joke ever was in primary school. I can't remember what class, but I was very young. And the teacher was teaching about the orbit of the Earth and the sun and all this kind of stuff. And they said, where does the sun rise in the morning? And they were looking for east or west. And I went, in the sky, ha! And everybody laughed. And I remember thinking, ooh, that's nice. So then from there, I just kept trying to get that reaction from things and from comments. So for me, it's comments or, you know, punctuating serious moments with something to make people laugh.
Isn't it funny, like your first ride, you never forget the first time somebody laughed, or that big laugh you got?
Now I'm thinking, who was my first ride?
What about you, Barbara? Do you remember?
Well, I'm only new to this game, and we were talking earlier, and I would hesitate to call myself a comedian because I think that's a particular art and a skill. I would call myself more of a kind of comedy storyteller. But also recently, and coming back to what Enya was just talking about in the gym, I've had issues with my age catching up with me, my knee and my hip, blah, blah, blah. And I joined the gym and I had my first visit on my Sweeney Todd yesterday, right? So, yeah, it was a big deal. But while I was there, before yesterday, I had a session with the PT who was explaining to me, because this was all like I had no idea how to use any of the machines or what to do, and, you know. And he said, now, and you can go to classes. And I said, no, I can't go to a class. And he said, he was getting ready to say, no, you'll be well able, you'll be fine. And I went, no, I don't do well in a classroom situation. And I had a big penny drop moment when I realised it's the same with book clubs. If I'm at anything like that, I treat the other people there as an audience. And I've always done that, even long before I ever got on a stage, which was only 2 years ago. And I become a pain in the ass because I just disrupt everything and, you know, as you say, make jokes that are inappropriate or take the conversation off in another direction. So I guess I've always, but I always remember for years, not so much when I was in junior school, but certainly in secondary school. Like I did impressions of the teachers. I took the piss out of everything. And later on, and I remember feeling as well sometimes when you went out and you joined company, you know, you were meeting friends in the pub and then you arrived and there was a kind of, oh, here's Barbara, great, we can all relax now because she'll just take off.
Yeah, because she'll be on and we can relax. That's exhausting though.
Yeah, some days you're just not on the form, like, and then you feel everybody's disappointed because you just come in and said, I just want to sit down and have me drink, like I'm not in great humour.
I feel you have to be on all the time.
Oh, so much. Like my friends are used to me now, and like it's the, I suppose like it's a catch-22 because I love what I do and I love making people laugh, but because I do it for a living now, when I'm sitting around my friends, I'm like, right, I don't want to be the jester now or like the clown now, like can someone else do it? But before I got into live stand-up, that was where I started noticing, okay, this is starting to become more frequent now where people are laughing at me all the time. Like I clearly have some type of wit here. And my house used to be like a halfway house when I was younger. My mother used to always take in relatives if they were like fighting with their partner or if they were in between moving out and stuff like that. And they would be with us for so long. When they would move out, my mother would always be like, oh, do an impression of Brian there. And I used to be so good at doing it. So like I study people and like I learn their mannerisms and all.
That's great.
Now, Enya, Barbara and Brian, thank you so much. I'm Jennifer Zamparelli and thank you for listening to Just Between Us.